Long time no see, Thai. A confident, average-height woman entered the room, crossed wine and hugged Taehyung, who neither returned nor resisted the hug. He just did not react at all. She wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him in a close embrace. Her laughter was soft and melodic, clearly meant to draw his attention, whereas me, who was already drowning in my own misery, felt a different kind of pain striking my heart. Why me, God? I have been hurt by him before, but his coldness, his refusal to believe me or hear my side of the story, and I wasn't about to let myself be dragged down by those feelings again. Not here, not now. Ignoring the scene unfolding across the room, I turned around and made my way out, pretending I didn't notice and didn't care, as this is what I have been doing since he left, and in the past 6 years, I have mastered this skill. Yoonhee, my former business partner and new investor, hugged me knowing well that I am married. I did not return her hug, but instead gazed at Wine, hoping for even the smallest reaction, but she was resolute in her decision to ignore me. I caught her deliberately looking away from me. The stiffness in her posture and the way she pretended not to care, that hurt. The warmth of the other woman's embrace was making me feel something. Disgust. It was making me feel disgusted that some other woman was touching me. Soon Wine walked out. I removed Yoonhee's arm from around my neck and stepped back to create a distance between us. Business should remain business, Miss Han. His expression hardening. I would appreciate if you maintain your distance from me. Oh, don't be so serious. I just got excited meeting you after so long. He walked towards his seat and gestured her to take a seat as well without uttering any word. If you have a proposal, keep it professional. Otherwise, this conversation is over. You know, said with a coy smile, we would make an unstoppable team if we combine our resources. Her words and her expressions were pointing at something else than only business. There is a reason we are not business partners anymore. Then why are you letting me invest in your business? Her smile flattered, but she maintained her calm expressions. Was. What? Broke her calm composure and frowned, being confused. I was letting you invest in my business. I changed my mind the moment you ignored my wife and hugged me. The severity in his tone pierced through her playfulness, and she realized she had gone too far. You let your position down by marrying her. Everyone knows about what she did. Referred to Wine's involvement in accident, as the whole media knows about it. You may leave. Dismissed her mid-sentence. Taken aback. You can't, and best of luck for the future of your business. His cold words made it clear that her business would suffer as a result. Gods will show you the way out. Ignoring her existence, he started reading his files again as she left the room, fuming in anger. The night dragged on. The minutes felt like hours, and Wine remained where she was, lost in her thoughts, dreading the moment when she will have to face him again. I need you, Yoonhee. Talk to me so strange. You know I did not do it intentionally, right? Tears slipped from her eyes one by one. I never wanted this. How can I prove it to him? She sobbed but whispered again after regaining control over her emotions. I don't need to prove anything to anyone. I just need to be strong and wait for the right time when I can get out of this. She encouraged herself as if she was her own parent. But the shivers she felt in her body were enough to tell her that things weren't that easy. She heard him call her from the living room. His voice had instability. Soon after, his staggered footstep could be heard in the corridor, making Vine to stand up from her bed, being tense and terrified. There was silence for a few minutes before he collided with the bedroom door, as if he had let himself fall over it. The door opened, and he balanced his body by grabbing the doorknob. He swayed as he approached her. His eyes glazed and unfocused, roamed over her as if she was something to be possessed. He had come home late as usual, but tonight was different. The smell of alcohol on him and the store stench that filled the air as soon as he stumbled through the door was enough to tell her that tonight he was drunk. Stumbling over his feet, he barely made it through the door before he started calling her name, slurring it like a curse. Ryan. He called her name softly, almost pleadingly. She tried to ignore him, hoping he would just pass out on the couch, but he found her. He stood right in front of her, hardly having a control over his body, and stared at her with his half-lidded but intent eyes, which alarmed her more. His hands reached out and fingers brushed her arm, but she recoiled at the touch, the fear seizing her body like ice. Don't, whispered while stepping back. He did not stop, but kept stepping forward until her back collided with the shelf behind her. You disgust me. She threw her harsh words at him, making his eyes turn dark, and he punched the mirror, breaking it, hurting himself, making her flinch and collapse on the floor in the same spot she was standing a moment ago. Van buried her face in her hands, stifling a sob. She felt trapped, like a caged animal with nowhere to run. She didn't know how much longer she could endure this, how much longer she could keep pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Her misery wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket, and she wondered whether she would ever find a way out of this darkness. But she looked up at him with a frown when she heard him crashing on his knees with a third in front of her. A tear escaped his eyes, which she wiped before looking at her. His blank gaze concealed pain and hurt very well. She felt the panic rising in her chest as he reached out. His hand stroked her arm. His touch was warm, not rough like she had expected, but it still made her flinch. She pulled back, her voice barely above a whisper as she said, "What do you want?" "You. I want you." Thinking that he was talking about his needs, she shook her head violently before bursting into tears, which were a testament of her fears. Lessen my pain somehow. While his every phrase startled her, his loud sob made her concerned. However, she kept staring at him quietly. I'm just hurting too, Wyatt. I'm lost. He cried harder until he began getting hiccups from crying. Why didn't you? Sobs. Did anything when that woman touched me? laughed while crying. I'm stupid. Why would you do anything when you hate me? He laughed as he was making a fool out of himself, but I remained silent. That that I pointed at you didn't had any bullets in it. Told while crying like a kid. Are you regretting that it didn't had any bullets? Scoffed while wiping her tears and sarcastically questioned him. I regret putting you in that situation. Looked at his lap while tears fell non-stop. Why are you regretting? Am I not a culprit anymore in your eyes? Pain dripped from her tone. As she reminded him of his misery, his expression darkened and he looked at her with his red teary eyes, burning in the fire of revenge. He clenched his jaws and leaned closer to her, causing her to scoot back, but the wall behind her didn't help at all.